I'm challenging myself to beat all 296 Nintendo 64 games released in North America. The rules for this challenge are pretty simple. I don't have to beat 100% of any game. As long as I beat the final boss, that counts. I'll always try to beat the game without help from chat or guides, but I also have no shame in asking for help. In our last episode, we completed Donkey Kong 64 and rolled to see what our next game would be. We ended up rolling biofreaks, which was released in 1998 by Sapphire and Midway Games. I had never heard of this game before, but honestly the name piqued my interest. A chatter had actually told me that it was a fighting game beforehand, so I at least had an idea of what I was getting into. What I really didn't know was just how janky that this game actually is. I'll give it the benefit of the doubt because honestly I think it just didn't mix very well with an emulator. A lot of the controls really didn't work, so I genuinely believe that it could have been a lot better on original hardware. However, all I have to go off of is the experience I got from playing the game. That being said, let's hop into my review of biofreaks. I honestly think biofreak shines from a design standpoint. It has some really good characters in it and an interesting story to play off of. The game actually does a pretty good job of laying the foundation of the story, so I'll just let it take it from here.
It is the not too distant future. Here, the mighty country known as America has fallen like all great empires throughout history. Its 50 states broken into private territories after what was called the Techno-Industrial Civil Wars. Computer technology, bioengineering, cybernetics, and mechanics accelerated at such an incredible rate, it forced industrial competition to the point of uncontrollable and ruthless corporate espionage. While the government tried to keep control of the country, the effect of the giant corporations' white-collar wars drove the economy into a tailspin. With Wall Street in shambles, the government bankrupt, and technological corporate giants running unorthodox takeovers, Neo-America was born.
Corporations choose champions to fight for them, and the winning corporation gains control of everything. You can choose from a list of 8 different fighters. Some are really cool and others are kind of forgettable. The level designs are also pretty good, up until the last level. Seriously, what the hell is this? I decided that completing arcade mode would be fitting to call this game beat. You choose from one of the 8 characters and work your way through 9 levels. Each level selects one of the other fighters randomly and gets progressively harder as you get further into it. Levels 8 and 9 are not standard fighters, and we'll talk more about them when we get there. I decided that if I could beat it fast enough with one character, I'd run through with some more. Spoiler, it took me way longer than I thought it was going to. The gameplay is where biofreaks really falls off in my opinion. For starters, it's insanely hard. I went into my first attempt without changing any of the difficulty settings and chose Bullseye as my first fighter. In level 1 I got paired up against Cyclown, and honestly it went pretty well. I was just trying to get a handle on the controls at this point. I picked up the basics such as jumping, flying, some melee, and ranged attacks. Combos in this game were extremely hard and really just didn't work for me. One thing I learned pretty early on is that my computer opponents were no joke in this game. They spam, and I mean spam, their ranged attacks. It feels like playing that guy who just mashed random buttons in Mortal Kombat. I managed to beat Cyclown on my first attempt, and honestly it gave me a false sense of hope for this game. For level 2, we ended up getting paired against Sapo, a robotic frog monster thing. Again, I was able to beat Sapo on my first attempt, and this just added to the false sense of hope that I had for this game. In level 3, we got paired up against Sabotage. This one did not go well at all. I got absolutely destroyed in this fight. I did, however, learn in this fight that you could actually blow each other's arms off mid-fight. That's pretty cool. I didn't do any practice runs for this game, and honestly I probably should have, but I kind of thought the game would be easy. That was a big mistake though. After a few more attempts to beat Sabotage, I decided to mess around with some settings. I lowered the difficulty to Novice and gave myself infinite retries. That way I wouldn't have to keep starting from the beginning when I ran out of retries. I went back in with Bullseye again. This time I managed to make it to level 5, but once again I got paired up with Sabotage. And once again, she was whooping my butt for a little bit, but we did make it through this time. She just loves absolutely spamming her range attacks and taking my arm off. And once you lose your arm in this game, it's GG's. I ended up beating her on time, which is kind of lucky, but you know what? I'll take it. A win is a win. Level 6 was where it all went downhill again. I got paired up against Zipperhead and he absolutely destroyed me. Probably worse than Sabotage was. Every time you lose a fight in this game though, you actually get an opportunity to change your character. So because I was losing a lot to Zipperhead, I took this opportunity to check out some of the other characters. I landed on Delta. She kind of reminds me of like a mix of Wonder Woman and Devora. Don't forget about Bullseye though, he'll be important later on in this playthrough. I actually really liked Delta's fighting style. She felt very solid in both ranged and melee attacks. A lot of raging and attempts later, I managed to make it through level 6. And level 7 honestly was quite a bit easier than level 6. I just think even though it gets harder as you progress, some characters are just harder than others. In level 7, I started experimenting with disabling features, and honestly, it didn't really go that well. I tried to disable the ability to fire because I was tired of the constant spam, but that just made it worse because the computer started spamming another ranged attack. In level 8, you fight Clonus. Clonus is literally just a clone of whichever character you beat level 7 with. In my experience, Clonus can be easier, it just depends on which character you're playing as. For now, I was still playing as Delta, and Clonus was really tough. Many tries later, and I actually managed to beat it as Delta. The final level design is one of the worst design levels I have ever seen. I'm not even exaggerating that. Why are there 3 random platforms in the middle of what I can only assume is the ocean? And why are there robotic piranhas in the water just waiting to murder you when you fall in? I genuinely believe the developers of this game just made it with the intention of making players hate their lives. I screwed up at this point because I was talking to chat and let the retry timer run out. That means I have to start all the way over again. So we started over, but my brother was watching and suggested I actually play as Minitek. This ended up being a really good suggestion because Minitek is very good. I made it all the way back to level 8 this time as Minitek, and this is the reason I feel like beating Clonus is easy just depending on who you're playing as. Because Clonus was way easier to beat this time around with Minitek. I'm not really sure the reason behind it, but I think it's because Minitek doesn't really have any great range attacks to spam like some of the other characters. I beat Clonus on the first try, but this still leaves the final boss, Mutilator. How the hell am I gonna beat this guy? There was actually a point where I started to think it wouldn't be possible. Between the awful level design and controls, I thought I was cooked. But there's always a way, and unfortunately, the way does not include Minitek, so we're gonna have to leave him behind now. He just doesn't have the ranged attacks to deal with Mutilator. But who does? Well, that's why I told you not to forget about Bullseye. He's our key to beating this game. I actually had to cheese the game a bit to do so though. In the features, you can turn off 3 different settings: flying, firing, and shields. I turned off shields and absolutely spammed the hell out of Bullseye's guns. And within 2 tries, I was able to actually beat Mutilator. I know it's not the most ideal way to win, but I really didn't see any other way. This game is incredibly hard and just did not play well on an emulator. Maybe I'll just come back to biofreaks at some point on original hardware. I really didn't enjoy biofreaks all that much and honestly was really happy to be done with it. The thing that really sucks though is you don't get anything interesting for beating it. All you get is more backstory for the character you beat the game with, and it's honestly not worth it at all for how hard this game was. Initially, I was gonna rate the game 0 out of 10 for enjoyment, but it actually did have its moments. I'll give it a 1.1 out of 10 for enjoyment and a 9.1 out of 10 for difficulty. Game 2 of 296 complete. If you enjoyed the video and would like to follow along as I complete this journey, it would mean a lot if you would smash that subscribe button for me. I'll be live streaming every single game, so if you want to watch live, you can find all my links down below. And finally, for a sneak peek of the next game we're going to be playing, stick around to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bet. 283. What is that? 283 is what we got, chat. 283. Wheel of Fortune. Whoops, you guys can't see it. Wheel of Fortune, chat, is the game we're playing next.